Hello, everyone, and welcome to Todd Talks. Today, I am joined by James Haeck, our lead writer at D&D Beyond, and we are talking about all things Artificer related. You may know this already, but in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which you can pre-order on D&D Beyond right now by clicking on the link in chat or in the description below, you're getting the Artificer class, which is great. I'm like, I love the Eberron setting, and that's where the Artificer comes from, but the fact it's getting reprinted in Tasha's is, I think, a fantastic thing for players who maybe don't want to buy a source book to get that content along with that. And also, the armor will be included in that as well. Right now, we only have the Unearthed Arcana version of it, but today we're talking about the three that we know about. That's the Alchemist, that's the Artillerist, and that's the Battlesmith. Yes. Where do you want to start? Where are we going to start breaking things down for those that are excited for all the Artificer-ness?
Well, let's do a quick dive on what the Artificer is in general. If you haven't picked up Eberron, and if this 13th core D&D class, the first new core class since the release of the Player's Handbook, is brand new to you. The Artificer is, simply put, a master of unlocking magic in everyday objects and supreme inventors. They treat magic as a science, not as an art, and that sets them apart from the other sort of academic, scholastic magic user, the wizard, insofar as they use their magic to create things rather than sort of treating spells as a pure medium.
And that's where a lot of those opportunities for reflavoring come into play, probably more than any other spellcaster, right? Whenever they recommend you cast a cantrip or your spell as an artificer, they recommend you kind of reflavor it with some kind of inventory thing. Like maybe you're pouring potions, or you have something on the end of a long mechanical claw doing these things.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is a lot of advice for artificers on where your magic actually comes from. If you use the acid splash cantrip, maybe you have quickly whipped up a vial of acid using a powder and a little bit of water, and you're just, literally splashing it on your opponent. If you're using the mending cantrip, maybe you've imbued a sewing needle with magical power, and you just sort of run it across a teared fabric, and it instantly stitches up.
I don't know that I like that. I don't like animated needles stitching things up. But yes, there are lots of examples of say you're an artificer or artillerist, and all your spells are coming out of your arcane cannon. Fireballs are erupting out of there. You have a bazooka. And that's what I love about Artificers, is that ability to reimagine and reflavor magic in this more steampunk way. It doesn't have to be steampunk. There's a lot of different ways you can envision the way an Artificer functions. I think there's a good example of a monster, the Kobold Inventor, right? Spurt, if you have seen Critical Role, played by Chris Perkins, is, in my opinion, an artificer. You got a scorpion at the end of a spear, and you're using that as a weapon. Well, you could turn that into one of your infused weapons as an artificer. Flavor it that way.
If you got Eberron Rising from the Last War, there's a little sidebar called Artificers in Other Worlds that talks about where artificers might appear elsewhere in the D&D multiverse, and I can only imagine this is expanded on a bit in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Because even though artificers were originally created for the Eberron setting, where magic is an everyday thing and many people use the things created by artificers to power their lives, there are other artificers found throughout the D&D worlds. In the Forgotten Realms, for instance, there's a gnomish or a gnome-populated island west of the Sword Coast called Lanton. And if you played Waterdeep Dragon Heist, I won't spoil it if you haven't, but if you've played Waterdeep Dragon Heist, you know some of the remarkable inventions that have come from there. It's crucial to one of the four villains' plots. In the world of, or in the Planescape setting, there are artificers all over the city at the heart of the plains sigil. And in the Ravnica setting from Magic the Gathering, the Izzet League trains innumerable artificers to create magical tools to sort of cement them as the masters of invention.
And then again, in Dragonlance and Kryn, the gnomes are quite famous for,
Yes.
if you've read the books, creating all manner of devices. Maybe not all of them work all the time, including time-traveling devices.
The Tinker Gnomes of Dragonlance are incredible.
More of a threat than a help. But those are all fantastic examples of artificers in D&D, and in fantasy, this is like, we increasingly see firearms and weird inventions in our fantasy settings. So if that's the kind of thing that really appeals to you, artificers are fantastic. Let's go down the list. We start off with some basics when it comes to the core of this class.
Yeah, so artificers have two main ways in which their magical inventions are represented. And the first of those is fairly traditional. It's just casting spells. Like we talked about, the game encourages you to flavor your spell casting as using an item that you've kind of whipped up and got kind of in your toolkit, in your tool belt. And that ranges from cantrips and first level spells at first level all the way up to 5th level spells when you're a 17th level character. So they've got that paladin and ranger style half caster progression going on. And that's supplemented by their ability to infuse items with magical power. So as soon as you're a 2nd level artificer, you can infuse there are a number of specific infusions that you can use that range from making a weapon just a little bit more powerful, like creating a repeating crossbow. You could create a homunculus servant that helps you out. And there's a number of little infusions like this. And there's also the ability to replicate brand new magic items, things like an alchemy jug or a bag of holding or sending stones for communication, wands of secrets. And there are big lists of magic items that you can create using this infusion feature that you can just have around. The only limitation on this is that you have only a small amount of infusions that you can have at once. This starts at 2, and by the end of your adventuring career, you can have up to 6 infused items all hanging around at once.
It's hard to articulate just how powerful this is, because you are very much at the will of your dungeon master otherwise, whether you find a magical item like a bag of holding. Everyone wants a bag of holding. I mean, that's just like the thing you need. Sending stones are very helpful.
But in my current campaign that I'm running at home, we have an artificer in that game, and my party encountered a dragon horde full of gold. And the party had 1 bag of holding, and they were like, okay, well, let's load it up. And I don't usually bother about like weight and encumbrance, but when it comes to getting treasure back home, it is something I think about. And we use D&D Beyond, so all the weight is calculated for us. We don't have to worry about it as much. So I said, you just don't have enough space in your bag of holding to carry these like 50,000 gold pieces that this dragon had back home with you. And the artificer was like, I'll make another one. And I was like, yeah, all right, sure, go ahead, make another bag of holding and shove all the gold in.
And that's something not to forget about the artificers. They have a certain advantage later on to actually crafting magical items outside of the system of creating infusions. So if you really want that experience of that, there's further rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide as to how to craft magical items. The artificer is still very good at that. It's going to cost a lot more money. By a lot more money, I mean more than 0, and your time and components.
And there are rules in Xanathar's Guide to Everything that expand on those magic item creation rules from the DMG in a really useful way. And I think that highlights kind of a specific quirk of the Artificer in that their class features, they aren't making magic items per se. They're infusing regular everyday objects with magical power. That's where their power really lies.
It's again, this is why it's very fun. For a test, I did actually recreate Spurt as played by Chris Perkins, and I took every little thing that the Kobold Inventor stat block has, and I justified its existence either by renaming my cantrips in D&D Beyond to the actual attack that is in the Kobold Inventor stat block, or like flat out creating a spear with a scorpion that is a magical +1 spear, with this ever-living scorpion on the end of it. So Artificers are really fun to flavor and be able to kind of call out and get these magical items. At first, it's not overpowering, but boy, once you get to like 6th and 7th level, like 6th level, I believe, you get things like, boots of Elvenkind, cloak of Elvenkind. You've got gloves of thievery, and you start to see that your pathway as an artificer is not very limited. You can decide to become the stealthy artificer, that almost James Bond type who's made items specifically to get them into any kind of situation. And you're great at stealing. You're great at sleight of hand. Or you can decide, I'm going to make myself a belt of giant strength, and I'll make strength my dump stat because I'm going to get real strong later. So artificers have a fluidity and they're right up there. They're up there with warlocks, maybe even past warlock, in terms of customizability. I would say.
Let's run through some more of these features, because we've talked about kind of the heart of the artificer here, the ability to tinker with objects and infuse them with magic power, cast some spells. But there's more to the artificer than that. There are things like their subclass, which we'll get to in a bit. There's the ability to immediately create a set of artisans tools just kind of out of the scraps you have at hand. It makes me think of that line from the first Iron Man movie. He built all this in a cave. Yeah. You can always find the right tool for the job you want to make.
It's such a well screened line. Yeah, but that's the thing. You can just create this stuff out of the blue. And some weird items as well, right? You can create like things that make a particular smell or sound that can kind of give you like some an inventive way of approaching certain problems early on.
Yeah, it's a little sort of open-ended tool. The rules don't go into like the effects of these things so much, so they may seem like flavor. But if you're the kind of person who likes to find imaginative solutions to open-ended problems that your DM sets up, I think this is a very fun thing for you to play with.
Yeah.
There are other fun abilities you get as you level up higher, like the Flash of Genius feature, which is something that you can use to help not only your rolls, but your friends' rolls as well. As a reaction, you can add your intelligence modifier to any ability check or saving throw. It's like your friend is about to tumble into a spike pit trap, and you're just able to shout out, "Wait, rest your body weight somewhere else," and they're like, "Huh?" And suddenly they miraculously avoid falling into the trap.
Now you really need to like imagine how powerful that is. Like you can take your intelligence modifier and add it to anyone's skill check, right? Or your own, or a save or whatever, and like that is so amazingly powerful because expertise is pretty great, and you can always take expertise via a couple of feats in D&D and get that, your double proficiency bonus to something. So if you want to be the best, kind of artificers can do it, right? Once they hit 7th level and they can just pop that flash of genius onto things.
Yeah,
they can Tony Stark anything up. They can be like, well, I'm not good at this thing, but I'm going to figure it out. I'll become good at it as I think about it.
Yeah, and beyond that, it lets you help out your friends too, making it a really good teamwork tool.
Yeah. And if you've got a couple of artificers, then this can get interesting.
Yeah. At 10th level, you get a feature called Magic Item Adept, which is a nice little quality of life feature that not only lets you attune to up to 4 magic items at once instead of 3, but it lets you make magic items of a common or uncommon rarity in a quarter of the time and with half the cost. So that's that's again tying into the magic item creation rules in the DMG and Xanathars that we talked about earlier. You're just good. You're just better at making magic items.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is what they do. They are the ones who make magical items, and you can make spell like items that can store spells, and eventually, the Soul of Artifice is just absolutely crazy. I'm not crazy, I should say, just absolutely wild, because the Soul of Artifice just gives you such amazing bonuses for being attuned to so many magical items. It's a great capstone to any class.
Yeah, you've kind of, as you gain Artificer levels, you kind of become the guy who is able to use any magic item. So at 14th level, you start ignoring all class, race, spell level requirements on attuning to magic items. By 18th level, you can tune up to 6 magic items at once instead of just 3. And then as your capstone at 20th level, your Soul of Artifice ability not only gains you a +1 bonus to all of your saving throws per magic item you're currently attuned to, right? So up to +6 if you're a magic item Christmas tree all decked out. But if you're ever dropped to 0 hit points without being killed outright, you can use your reaction to end one of your 6 Artificer infusions. And then you just drop to 1 hit point instead of 0. And you can do that for every infusion you've got active still. It's your magic items just kind of wink out of existence.
It's that Sauron effect, right? Only the opposite. You're sacrificing the magical items so that you can live a little bit longer. And that means you can start using things like a Rod of Resurrection at higher levels, or maybe build one for yourself. And that, I think, is what makes it very open-ended. And then certainly that becomes more of a conversation with how did you get the items necessary to make these high-level magical items. But the fact that you can use them as an artificer only makes sense. They're super fun to play.
Pre-order Tasha's Cauldron of Everything on D&D Beyond, and unlock exclusive pre-order rewards, including digital dice.